Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. In my last video, I talked about how much I was enjoying Kagurabachi's Swordbearer assassination arc. However, since that arc was starting to get pretty long, I decided to find a rough halfway point so I could just put a stop there, talk about what had happened up until that point, and now the time has finally come for us to return to Kagurabachi and talk about the second half of it. And oh boy, has it been dynamite. So today we're talking about the Kamunabi Headquarters Invasion, which begins around chapter 78 or so. So we're going to talk about then, from then all the way to the end of chapter 112. So without further ado, let's talk about how it took our beloved Taco Sensei 112 chapters just to finish his prologue. So I would describe the Kamunabi Headquarters Invasion as a quintessential shonen battle arc. And what I mean by that is we have two opposing forces, one considered allies, one considered the villains, and it's just kind of like an all-out war going on. Both sides have notable figures, so we have plenty of opportunities for some of the side characters that we have not had a whole lot of time with to really show off what they're made of. We get a chance to look into their backstories, we get to see what some of their cool battle techniques are. And yeah, like if you've ever seen something like Bleach or Naruto, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So throughout this arc, we have a number of battles where we get to see that very scenario play out. And the first one I really want to cover is the introduction of Kiri. We have my boys, Hakuri, and a returning Yuruha facing off against the likes of, I don't know, like 4 or 5 of the notable Hishaku members, and their backs are up against the wall a little bit. So this is when the Kamunabi call on the elite troops to step into battle and to really try and even odds. And one of those elite members is, of course, Kiri Shirarakai. In her introduction, we learn that she is the granddaughter of Itsuo Shirarakai, who you may remember as the legendary swordsman that developed the EI White Purity style. And what I really love about Kiri is how she just kind of completely rebukes a lot of the beliefs that her grandfather has. Now, old Itsuo, he's a little misogynistic, as some of the boomers tend to be. He never even thought it was possible that his granddaughter could learn to become a sword wielder, considering she is a woman. And along with that, he is also a firm believer in a very swift and kind of a precise use of the sword. Obviously, he developed the EI White Purity style, so of course he's into that. So then in comes Kiri, and she's like, nah, I'm gonna reject all of this. I'm gonna become a woman sword wielder, and I'm gonna use a big ass sword that's too big for me just to show you that I can do it my way. And honestly, I really love the dynamic she has with some of the other characters, especially Iruha. A lot of them are a little put off by the fact that she's chill, she's very nonchalant, despite the fact that everybody is in a life or death situation. But of course, there is a lot more going on, so I don't want to dwell on her for too long. Because the next character is one I never thought we were actually going to see return to the series. But here he is. He is back from the very early days of Kagurabachi. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am of course talking about Mr. Definitely not Harry Potter fan fiction, Ikoto Hagiwara. Kind of thinking back to the Sojo days when the anti-Cloud Gorger squad got just completely decimated. I kind of just thought, that's it. They're all done. But it turns out that it's that very thing, that very fact that kind of plays into what Ikoto is going through right now, considering he is suffering from an immense amount of PTSD and depression, blaming himself for that squad getting wiped out. And it's severe enough to where he's bedridden. He can't get up, he can't function. He started to hallucinate his friend Kugara or something like that, actually appearing and talking to him, even though that's not happening at all. It's all imaginary. But then once everything starts going to shit, the imaginary Cougar kind of shows up and talks to Ikoto and is like, hey, I know you're not feeling great, buddy, but you still got some fights in you. You can still make a positive impact in what's going on. Honestly, I love that. He gets inspired to get up. He strolls out like a badass. He uses his magnetic powers to sense the location of this vessel that is messing with the headquarters force field. And then he just like, bam, shoots his iron sand out like an arrow and pierces the vessel from like a whole different floor. Like, stone cold. Just an absolute badass, awesome moment. And to see a character like Ikoto just come back and have this like really sweet scene was, it made me very happy. But I think the best fight from this section, and the one I want to talk about last, is the 4-way sword duel between Iruha, Natsuki, Yura, and Hokoto. First off, we get introduced to Hokoto, who is a member of the Hishaku, and we learn that he is this guy who has a sorcery power that allows him to control corpses like they're puppets. And he's the same guy that used that samurai that we've been seeing. He used that samurai to take out Ibuki Misaka, as well as Kunishige Rokihira, and kind of put this whole the whole story into motion. So, like, needless to say, Hokoto's list of victims, it's nothing to sneeze at. And you know what? He's not all talk. He can actually back it up. He's actually quite the formidable swordsman. And he doesn't really even need to use his sorcery or a fancy sword technique like the EI White Purity style. He's just kind of naturally gifted, and he wields it. He has some swag. Like, honestly, if this guy ever managed to get his hands on one of the enchanted blades, he might legitimately be one of the scariest guys in the verse. Like I'm not exaggerating. I'd be very, very terrified. And so at the same time that we get introduced to Hokoto, we have another character. We have Natsuki Misaka, who was the younger brother of Ibuki. And if you don't remember who Ibuki is, it was the original wielder of Cloud Gorger. So he shows up and he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder, like, because it turns out that, yeah, his brother was one of the enchanted blade wielders, and he thought he was also going to become one at some point. But it turns out that final spot ended up going to Iruha back in the day. This guy that was younger, more inexperienced than him, and he never really liked the way Iruha carried himself. He kind of thought he might have been a little bit too immature and not really fit to wield one of the enchanted blades. So it just makes it all the more ironic that now we're in a position where Natsuki has to team up with Iruha in order to face down Yura and Hokoto, two guys responsible for the death of his brother. And my god, this fight is electric, pun intended. It's like 2 or 3 chapters of just this beautiful sword choreography, intense clashes. You have people losing limbs, getting all bloodied, and just like barely holding on, barely surviving by the skin of their teeth. But despite all of the efforts our heroes have been putting in over these several chapters, it is not quite enough, because the thing that we've been trying to prevent the most ends up coming to pass. Despite the best efforts of the Kamunabi in preventing the release of the Swordmaster, they did not account for the possibility that one of their own top brass may have been a traitor. It is revealed that this man, Kensen, has actually been working to undermine the Kamunabi pretty much the entire time. In his mind, despite the Kamunabi being a government-appointed band of sorceries who are there to kind of keep law and order and keep other sorcerers in check, he feels that it's not working out. They don't quite have enough power, enough resources to properly do that. As we've learned throughout this story, there are a number of very powerful sorcerer clans who kind of maintain mob mentality around Japan, kind of rule using their own powers, like the Sazanami clan, for example. And so the Kamunabi are not quite capable of keeping them in check. However, in Kensen's eyes, though, if the Kamunabi happen to get a very powerful weapon like the Magatsumi, for example, well, then they'd be able to wipe out all those mob sorcerer clans easy peasy, right? So he secretly undoes the seal holding Magatsumi back, and this is when Yura is able to go in, infuse it with his own power. I think this happened sometime during the Rakuzachi auction. And now that Yura is here in the headquarters, he's able to kind of tap into the power of the Magatsumi. He's able to kind of draw energy from it to power himself, and well, things start to go south pretty fast. And as while this is happening, the Swordmaster actually able to senses like all the chaos going on, senses Yura like tapping into the Magatsumi, and that's when he like kind of leans into it. He sees an opportunity, and so he lends his strength to Yura, and he's able to use that to knock out Uruha and Natsuki pretty darn easily. Our boy Shiba, he tries to go in, make a clutch play, but unfortunately he teleports Yura out of the headquarters just a little too late, right? That link between him and Swordmaster's kind of already been established, but you know, it was a valiant effort. But then this is when we get a very, very cool scene. We get Chihiro and Samura. They stroll up to the base. They see Yura, and they're like, all right, it's go time. We get the two of them working together to take out this powered up Yura. We get this really cool sequence where Samura is using his Phoenix Flames to actually like heal this foreign power that's inside Yura. Like heal, I guess, quote unquote, trying to like purge it from his body. And it almost works. They actually come pretty darn close to defeating Yura, but it doesn't quite work out. Because once things start to go bad for Yura, the Swordmaster leaves his own body behind. And he like manages to take over Yura's body, basically becoming himself in the flesh, in full. And he also has his hands on the Magatsumi when this happens. I find it very difficult for writers to satisfyingly portray this balance between having the pinnacle, like the absolute strongest in your universe, while also being able to portray them as kind of a believable person, as a character that you can kind of like logically wrap your head around and like kind of understand like where they're coming from. And honestly, I've been blown away by Akimura Soga, the Swordmaster, because I feel like he's able to display both of these, like both sides of this dilemma, like very well, and he's become quite a memorable character in my eyes. First things first, he's obviously been built up from very early on in the series as the strongest swordsman, one without an equal. And he gets to show that off when he goes toe-to-toe with Chihiro and Samura, who, as you remember, I think Samura's pretty solidly like one of the best, you know, maybe the second best, and he's really no match for Akimura at all. But like, it's not even just like, oh, it was a good effort. Like he flexes on Chihiro and Samura, and God, that scene where he unsheaths the Magatsumi, and like there's like just a flood of I think it's blood, maybe it's some other liquid, I don't know, you guys can let me know, but like I'm gonna assume it's blood. And then this man proceeds to start using the full power of the Magatsumi to like destroy buildings, create these enormous craters. Like he really personifies this idea that the enchanted blades are like nuclear weapons of mass destruction, right? Like he is a walking human bomb, and he's just gonna destroy everything in his path. Like this man is even cutting through space and matter. He's not like slashing and creating shockwaves. No, he is slicing through space itself. Like this man might be able to defeat Gojo, Satoru Gojo. Like what is happening? But then on the other flip side, you know, outside of his powers and abilities, he's honestly a pretty fascinating character. At first glance, he does come off kind of cold, kind of brooding, but like that that element of him is counterbalanced a bit by him having these moments of like almost like witty sarcasm. Like there's this one moment where he recognizes Chihiro being his nephew, and so he like strolls up to him and he's just like, "Yo, I'm your uncle. I remember when you were this tiny little baby and I bought you a bib." Right? Like it's kind of goofy, but it is also unnerving at the same time. Now, for the longest time, we were told that the reason why Akamura caused the malediction was because he had gone insane, right? He lost his mind, kind of let his powers loose, and he had to be stopped. But then now that he's out and about and we're learning more about him, it's become very clear that he had not gone insane. In fact, he was quite the opposite. He was very sane. And that the malediction was a very deliberate and intentional action that he took. At some point during the war, he developed this hatred of the island invaders to a point where with no doubt in his mind, with absolute conviction, he viewed every single one of them as evil, even the women and children. And while we don't have the full context of everything yet, I feel like it's a pretty safe guess that what caused this may be related to Chihiro's birth, potentially the death of his mother, who would have been Akamura's sister. And so we get the scenario where, in his hatred of the island people, he kills them all, every single one of them. And despite then having all the Enchanted Blade wielders turn on him, he had his own brother-in-law, Kunishige, turn on him. Like, government turned on him and locked him up for 18 years. Like, despite all of that, he comes out of his prison and he has absolutely zero remorse, zero regrets. He does not view his actions with a shred of doubt. And once the dust kind of settles, he's kind of just like, time to get back to work, right? Like, clearly, everything I did 18 years ago was not enough, and there is still evil afoot. There is still a lot of suffering happening. And so he is here to rectify the situation. In Nakamura's mind, he is very much the hero of this story. He has arrived to save Japan from the imminent evil threats. He does not do what he does out of greed or for his own selfish desires. He does not do all of this for the fun of it. In his mind, he was born to be a hero and a savior. So it's a lot of these factors that I look at and I'm like, okay, this guy there's a lot of fun to be had, like analyzing his actions and his mannerisms and kind of like really grasping all of this and the way he carries himself. I know he's only been around for a short time, but he has quickly risen to be one of my all-time favorite anime/manga villains. And it's crazy to think that because he's only been around for a short time, like he's kind of just, like, we're kind of just getting started with this. Chihiro's N10 gets destroyed. Samura ends up having to sacrifice himself, betting on the future generation to carry the torch. Chihiro just barely manages to get away with the help of Shiba, while Akamura gathers himself and prepares to take control of the Kamunabi and use them as his own personal army to carry out his vendetta against all things evil. And then that's when we get the bombshell revelation at the end of chapter 112 that this is the end of Kagurabachi Part One. I was so hyped in the moment when I was reading the chapter and I saw that end, the end of Part One, because that just means like there is still so much of the story left to be told. Like, honestly, I might be more excited for Kagurabachi Part 2 than I was for like Chainsaw Man Part 2 or the second half of One Piece. And in that final scene, we have Chihiro picking up the blacksmith's hammer once again, walking in his father's footsteps, preparing to reforge the broken enchanted blades. Now, I don't know like everything that we're going to be experiencing in Part 2. Like I have a couple of hopes and desires I would like to see. Like, I'm definitely interested in seeing what kind of enchanted blades Chihiro makes using the broken bits of N10 and Cloud Gorger. We see that Iori has now taken Tobimune, her father's sword, and is going to be kind of taking over the role as the wielder of that blade. And I'm very excited to see how she kind of grapples with the death of her father and how she grows and becomes the new Tobimune wielder in this ongoing conflict against Akimura. And of course, my boy Hakuri, one of my favorites. He kind of got pushed back into the background a little bit during all this chaos, so I'm hoping he has a big comeback and becomes a very prominent character in the next part. And of course, there's a lot of secondary characters I would like to see more of, but I think in particular, I'd like to see Shiba and Hiyuki kind of really get back into the fight and like really show what they're made of. But guys, I think this video has gone on long enough, so I'm gonna begin wrapping it up here. And I want to give each and every one of you a big thank you for watching this far into the video. What was your favorite part about Kagurabachi Part 1? And what do you want to see most as you go into Part 2? Let me know down in the comments below. And I want to apologize for kind of being a bit MIA as of late. I've had a lot going on in my life, but needless to say, things are looking up and up. I've kind of gotten things sorted out, been taking care of myself. I'm honestly feeling better than I ever have. Very excited to be getting back to the grind, getting back to making some videos for you guys. If you're interested in keeping the Kagurabachi discussion going, feel free to hop on over to our Discord server. I have a whole channel there just for Kagurabachi. So feel free to hop in there and let's get the conversation going. And before I forget, I'm also over on Blue Sky. You can head over there. I post about One Piece, Kagurabachi, video games, and there's other miscellaneous stuff I have going on in my life. And with that, I think I'm done here. Thank you guys again for watching. I'll catch you in the next video. But until then, be good people. Peace.